We're going to talk about some test review questions. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'm going to give you some sample test questions that you may see tomorrow on the test. One of the sample test questions would be, what percentage of energy in food goes toward building body mass? The answer is only 10%. The process that helps to break down toxic alcohols at the expense of the liver function and energy metabolism, that is alcohol dehydrogenase. Syphilis is killed by oxygen, therefore it is an anaerobic bacteria, so you can't get it from a toilet seat because oxygen kills it. Adenosine triphosphate is ATP. Adenosine diphosphate is ADP. Aerobic respiration requires oxygen, so the question would be, aerobic respiration requires which of the following? Oxygen. You would have questions like, organisms that can make their own light, what do they exhibit? Bioluminescence. Then you need to know about luciferases and luciferin, and there's a formula for that in your notes that you need to look at. Like I said, you need to study all your notes. I'm just giving you some sample types of questions. All enzymes are said to be what? Because they speed up reactions. That's a catalyst. In your notes, you have many examples of variables that can affect enzyme function. So I'm going to ask you what affects it. Temperature, pH, salts, concentration gradient. There's a list in your notes. The building up of molecules is called anabolism, like anabolic steroids. We've talked about that. And breaking down would be catabolism. You need to know that on a chemical equation, the reactants are going to be on the left and the products are going to be on the right. We talked about in class that you don't always get more products than you have reactants, that sometimes things get broken apart, like whenever you're talking about bioluminescence. You need to know about a reaction, different types of reactions. A reaction where energy is required is what type of reaction? That's endergonic. And one where you're going to release more net energy than you're going to take in is exergonic. You need to know what type of muscle fibers red and white were, and slow and fast. So I might ask you, what muscle fibers have a large amount of mitochondria? That's going to be slow twitch. I might ask you which ones are red. That's going to be fast twitch, red muscle fibers. I might ask you which ones are white muscle fibers. And that's going to be fast twitch muscle fibers. Another sample question would be, fermentation pathways start with what process? It's the first stage in aerobic respiration. And that answer is glycolysis. I may ask you a true-false question like, does the energy from the sun sustain life? The answer would be yes. Excess amino acids are broken down into ammonia and various other particles in a cycle known as the Krebs cycle. Do enzymes split dietary proteins into amino acid subunits which enter the bloodstream? That's yes. And those are used to build proteins or other molecules. Does everything that you eat give you the same amount of energy? No. Do glycerol products enter glycolysis? Yes. And what cycle do fatty acid products enter? That's the Krebs cycle, the second stage of aerobic respiration. About what percentage of an adult's energy is stored in fat reserves? And that's 78%, and it's mostly triglycerides. When blood glucose concentration falls, the blank increases glucagon secretion. That's asking you what organ. It's the pancreas. Stored glycogen in your body is converted to glucose. When blood glucose concentration rises, the pancreas increases what secretion? What does the pancreas increase to decrease your blood sugar level so it doesn't get too high? That's going to be insulin. In humans and other mammals, the entrance of blank and other organic compounds into an energy-releasing pathway depends on the kinds and proportions of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins in the diet. I'm asking you what has to enter, and it's glucose. Compared with aerobic respiration, the net yield of ATP from fermentation is what? Small or large? Well, fermentation in anaerobic respiration isn't going to be as efficient as aerobic respiration, so that answer is going to be small. We talked about fast and slow twitch muscles just a second ago. So slow twitch muscles are what type muscles? What color? They're red, and they make ATP by aerobic respiration. I could ask you, slow twitch muscles have how many mitochondria? They have a lot. There's no specific number. Slow twitch muscles are more for what type activity? Prolonged marathon running or short burst like sprinters? The answer would be that it's prolonged activity like my sister-in-law that runs marathons. Fast twitch muscles would be like a sprinter. That's going to sustain short bursts. They're not going to have as many mitochondria or myoglobin. There's two types of fermentation. What are they? Lactate and alcoholic fermentation. Which type of fermentation causes lactic acid buildup and soreness? That one's lactate fermentation. What's the first stage of fermentation? It's glycolysis, just like in aerobic respiration. Does fermentation provide enough energy for single-celled anaerobic species? The answer is yes. Yes, like yeast in fermentation processes, like where we make different types of food that we eat. Is anaerobic respiration and fermentation as efficient as aerobic respiration? The answer is no, they're not. Aerobic respiration is going to be your most efficient type of energy mechanism as far as cellular respiration goes. Do coenzymes and cofactors help with energy conversions, metabolism, and cellular respiration? The answer is yes. The final stages of aerobic respiration break down pyruvate to carbon dioxide. True or false? The answer would be true. And I could ask these to you in a different way, so make sure you don't just memorize true. I may switch that around and ask you that same question and make it false. So please don't memorize just these answers. If you transfer electrons to a higher energy level, that's the electron transfer chain. And if you take ADP and you turn it into ATP, or you take ATP and turn it into ADP by adding or taking away a phosphorus, what is that process known as? That is phosphorylation. Electron transfer phosphorylation. Does that have to deal with NADHs and FADH2s that donate electrons? True or false? The answer is true. Where does electron transfer phosphorylation, the last step of aerobic respiration, occur? It occurs in those organelles that give you energy inside your cells. That would be mitochondria. Are there many ATP formed in the last stage of aerobic respiration or just a few? The answer is many, normally about 32. Could be a little less. Remember, we talked in class, you're going to get about 36 ATP produced, but that can range from 28 to 38 in the aerobic respiration process. During the Krebs cycle, where does the Krebs cycle occur? That's going to be inside the mitochondria. Okay, so we're going to continue the review and we're going to talk about aerobic respiration. I've asked you some questions previously. So there's 3 stages that go on in aerobic respiration, and the second stage has 2 parts. So the first stage of aerobic respiration would be what? The answer is glycolysis. The second stage of aerobic respiration would be and would include what? What 2 things? The answer is acetyl coenzyme A formation and the Krebs cycle. The last stage or step of aerobic respiration would be electron transfer phosphorylation. Where does glycolysis start and end? Cytoplasm. An energy investment of what starts glycolysis? ATP. During glycolysis, 2 ATP are used to split glucose and form how many pGals? 2. Enzymes then convert 2 pGals. Remember Penelope and Patricia that both can play really good golf? Those 2 pGals are going to get converted to 2 what? Because they're so good at golf, they're going to go join what association? Professional Golfers Association, PGA. So you're going to get 2 pGals, they're going to get converted to 2 PGAs, and then they're going to form 2 NADHs. During acetyl coenzyme A formation, where does that occur? What organelle? Mitochondria. Where does Krebs cycle occur? Mitochondria. Where does electron transfer phosphorylation occur? Mitochondria. How many ATPs approximately from 1 glucose molecule does aerobic respiration produce? We're going to go with 36, but the range can be 28 to 36 to 38. Usually it can vary, it depends. Bioluminescent organisms emit light when enzymes such as what are available or exist in the organism itself? Luciferases. Luciferases convert chemical bond energy into luciferins to produce what type of energy? Light energy. Luciferin gets added to what? To produce luciferin, ADP, and phosphorus. It's ATP. Luciferin plus ATP yields luciferin, ADP plus phosphorus. You can also have luciferin, ADP plus oxygen yielding oxyluciferin plus AMP plus CO2 plus light. So that pathway is what you're going to get that produces bioluminescence. When organisms produce their own light, what is it called? Bioluminescence. Enzymes speed up chemical reactions. What is that called? It's called a catalyst. What is Pac-Man's mouth? Active site. What is Pac-Man? An enzyme. What is the piece of pizza that we referred to that fits into Pac-Man's mouth? Substrate. How enzymes work. When enzymes fit together, the piece of pizza, the Pac-Man, when it fits all together, what is that called or referred to? It's the induced fit model, enzyme substrate complex, and lock and key mechanism. Can enzymes have more than one active site? Yes or no? Yes. Only what percentage of energy in food goes toward building body mass? 10%. Which law of thermodynamics states that energy is neither created nor destroyed? The first law. What is a measure of dispersal of energy in a system, which increases spontaneously? It's part of the second law of thermodynamics. Entropy. The entropy of two atoms blank when a bond forms between them. Increases or decreases? It decreases. What type of pressure exists in a plant, like in your house, that allows the plant's leaves to stay upright? Hydrostatic or turgor pressure. What is the amount of hydrostatic pressure that can stop water from diffusing into cytoplasmic fluid or other hypertonic solutions? That is osmotic pressure. So hydrostatic pressure or turgor pressure in plants is pretty much water pressure. It's just referred to as that in plants. What are the various types of solutions that something could be? What type of solution, like hypertonic, hypotonic, isotonic? What are all of those called? It's called the tonicity. Which type of solution causes a cell to get smaller? Hypertonic. Which one causes it to get larger? Hypotonic. And which one has the same amount of substances going in and out and the cell stays the same size? Isotonic. What is the movement of water from high to low until equilibrium is reached? Osmosis. What is the movement of molecules from high to low until equilibrium is reached? Diffusion. The use of a carrier or transport protein to move substances into or out of the cell is known as facilitated diffusion. Movement of food molecules into or out of a cell is called what? Phagocytosis. The movement of liquid into or out of a cell is known as pinocytosis. If you move anything into the cell, what is it referred to? Endocytosis. If you move waste out of the cell, what is it referred to? Exocytosis. What type of transport uses energy? Active. What type of transport does not require energy? Passive. Which type of energy moves down the concentration, or transport moves down the concentration gradient? So let's start all over on that one. What type of transport moves from an area of high concentration gradient to the low end of the concentration gradient? That would be passive transport. And if it moves from low to high on the concentration gradient, it's active transport. And in your PowerPoint, there's an analogy for that with cars and trucks. Bulk phase endocytosis uses what to bring stuff into the cell? It uses a vesicle. When specific molecules bind to surface receptors, which are then enclosed in an endocytic vesicle, what type of endocytosis is that? It's receptor mediated. Can cotransporters exist inside your cells? Yes. Cotransporters are an active transport protein that moves substances across a membrane at the same time, so they co-transport things. And the sodium-potassium pump is an example. The ability of a cell membrane to control which substances and how much enter and leave the cell is referred to as what? Selective permeability. The cell membrane is also referred to as a what? Hint, it has two layers, and it has heads and tails. That would be phospholipid bilayer. The cell membrane looks like an artwork with a bunch of pieces put together, and it lets things move in and out. So what's the other name for it? Fluid mosaic model. The phospholipid bilayer is made of phospholipids. What part likes water? That's the hydrophilic head. What part hates water? That's the hydrophobic tail. All right, so there's a little review for you that has a bunch of questions. That does not mean that that will be all the questions. That's just an example of a test review for you, and I took that straight from the notes. So make sure you study all your notes. Email me with any questions.